So how did you end up doing Love and Mercy?
How did I end up doing Love and Mercy? I love that we don't even get to say like, hello.
Oh yeah,
how
no,
are you?
I know, sorry, all of that as well. I feel like I delivered my cue so well. Okay.
Hello, how are you? It's so nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you.
And how did I come to Love and Mercy? I was, you know, like most actors, seduced by really good writing. And the script was very ambitious. It had 2 different time periods and 2 different actors playing one man who suffers from mental illness. And it's really a portrait, partially not just of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who is a very famous genius musician, but is very, you know, had a really disturbing life and that most people don't know about. And I just felt, I was so compelled by the storytelling and the writing, and then I met Melinda and fell in love with her. And I just always thought the director had a really amazing handle on the material and what he wanted, and it was just, he was gonna be very bold and ambitious right off the bat. And you know, it's like, go big or go home, you know? I just felt like we were gonna try for something, and even if we failed, it would be a really interesting endeavor to be a part of.
Did you know that it was gonna be, like, I found the style of it when it was flipping in between the way that he was hearing things and the way that, I mean, did you know he was shooting it all like that and he was gonna edit it all?
We talked about that when we were all sort of getting ready to make the movie, and we knew, Bill Pohlad, who directed it, you know, knew kind of that he was there would be something sonic about the movie. You know, I've heard people say, and I actually, when I rack my brain and think about it, I think it's true that this is one of the best movies about making music that's ever been made. I mean, really to go into the studio and see how Brian Wilson translated something in his brain into music, into the world. I found that as an artist just fascinating to understand, you know, a guitar player who's like, I don't know, man, that sounds kind of weird. And he's like, just trust me, because he can hear the whole thing in his mind. It's incredible to me.
So I wanted to ask about Melinda, because
I
wanted to know what happened to her before she met him, that she ended up working in the car dealership.
Yeah, the car dealership. Well, she was a sometime model.
Yeah.
You know, she's a tall, beautiful Southern California blonde. She had dated a lot of athletes, you know, like professional football players or basketball, and she had a lot of sort of odd jobs. You know, this was like going into the 80s when women were like supposed to be in the workforce, you know, and she had the shoulder pads and she only had to take care of herself. She wasn't married, she didn't have kids. When she met Brian, she was in her late 30s, and I think had kind of given up on the idea of marriage and children, you know, the idea of anything traditional in her life. She had a really good relationship with her mother and nice family and all that. And so the car dealership, you know, she was a hot woman selling really masculine cars to men in Southern California, and just turned on the charm and everything she learned by being a model. And she's very competitive as a person, which I found intriguing.
Yeah.
And so I loved that, you know, she really wanted to be like car saleswoman, woman of the month, you know, at the Cadillac dealership. And, you know, she always knew how to make money and knew how to do that. And yeah, it is just completely like, that's the randomness of life that he walked in there to buy a car that day.
Yeah, but I was so amazed that she didn't get more, at her compassion, that she didn't get more freaked out more often. Especially when she met Gene and got introduced to that whole world. Like, I think he's incredible in the film, but you look at Paul Giamatti's performance and imagine being around that and think like, being in a room with that guy, being with Gene and seeing the way that he treats him from the first instance, if he was as intense as that in real life, that she would be out, and that she keeps going back and is so compassionate was sort of amazing.
I think it's important to remember that the time was so different than, like, psychiatry makes leaps and bounds, you know, and he was, I think when she first encountered it, first of all, she hates Gene Landy. I mean, no holds barred. She was not into that guy. However, Brian is more generous with him, as he is about everything in life. Brian is such a generous, beautiful spirit and graceful person that even to this day, he won't really say bad things about Jean, which is amazing. Or his father or any of it. It's really interesting. But Melinda really hated him. And it was all much worse than even what we put in the film.
Really?
Way worse. It's completely abusive and just insanity. And
what was wrong with him?
What was wrong with Brian?
No, what was wrong with Jean?
Like, he's just like psychopath.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay. I thought there might be a name for it, but no, okay.
No, I'm actually.
Was it that he was just trying to make money out of him, or he was obsessed with him?
He a little bit of both. You know, he had some success getting. He was sort of like a bad sober coach. Like, he got some famous people off drugs and alcohol, and that's how the family found him. That's how the Wilson family found him, and gave Brian over to him. And then, you know, he practiced this totally quack psychology that was like, I need total control, you know, he can't have contact with these bad influences that turned him into this. And it's like, no, none of that was correct. And, you know, he was very power hungry and just a nut job in his own right. And I think, but, you know, if you ask Brian will say, and the family will say, and I think Melinda would acknowledge, he got him out of bed. He was, you know, 350 pounds and didn't leave the house for 2 years. So Jean did get him up, did get him running on the beach, did get him healthy in a certain way, and then became like his manager, you know, and just overstepped every boundary that you would ever have with a doctor, essentially. And I think Melinda, he was so cut off from the family. Melinda was one of the first sort of sane people to walk into that situation that had no connection to Jean whatsoever. Yeah. And realize that what was going on was completely a travesty and wrong. Okay, so let's switch to you and Suffragette.
That's for today. That's for tomorrow. That's the same till I see you next. Off you go.
George, inside. Don't take him again, Maud.
Let me see him, please.
Trust you with him. After what you did to Taylor.
What did Taylor do to me, Sonny? For years. George belongs with me.
The law says he's mine, Maud.
Where he belongs is up to me. That's the law.
How did you come to Suffragette?
My agent called me and said, Abby Morgan's written a script about the suffragettes. And I thought, that sounds boring. Because in my head, I was like, oh, Mary Poppins and tea. And, you know, I didn't have any idea really about what, you know, the militant movement. And so I read it, and it was like a complete eye-opener. The whole thing was so shocking. I had no idea. I think I knew that, you know, women had been put in prison and that somebody died at a race course, and but everything else in the script I didn't know, and I couldn't believe that, and I felt kind of terrible about that, being British. And so I met the director about 2 days later, and within 10 minutes I loved her so much, and I was texting my agent under the table, being like, I'm gonna say yes. She usually stops me from doing things like that, and I was like, I don't care. And then she had been working on, she had the idea more than 10 years ago to make a film about the suffragettes. They'd been working on it, actively writing for 6 years.
With Abby or?
With Abby. And then Morgan, the writer. And then over that 6 years, they gathered a huge amount of research, and they put it all on a website. So when I joined, they had a website. So I had a lot of stuff there, and then I was signed on for like 9 months before we started shooting, so I had a lot of time to look at stuff. And it was amazing. It was kind of one of my favorite bits about the whole experience, was getting to read around these women and read prison diaries that they'd kept and letters they'd written to their loved ones, and so many things that felt so modern, you know, about the experiences they had. And also, one of the things that amazed me most was about the surveillance of these women. So it was the first time in history in London that they used surveillance, and they followed them, photographed them, tracked them, and then they had one of the first examples of Photoshop. So there was this amazing photo of this woman, the suffragette, and she's kind of wincing like this, and she's got a scarf around her neck. And they found the original photograph, and it's a policeman strangling her, and they covered it with a scarf.
Wow.
But they put the scarf on her so that they could put it in the newspaper and shame her, and so they used to print the photos of these women in the newspaper all the time.
Right.
So it was just stuff like that. It was like mind blowing, all of and so I loved the research so much.
And so, was your character? Was she real or an amalgam of many people?
Yeah, she's a composite of lots of different women. And so are most of the characters, apart from the political figures, and then Emmeline and Emily Wilding Davison. So they're all kind of, and Abby just read tons and tons and tons of, as many biographies as you get from, because there weren't that many by working class women, obviously, because of the literacy levels. But yeah, just lots of accounts of what they went through. And so she's sort of a mix-up. And but there's one suffragette that I came across once we started shooting called Hannah Mitchell, who was really similar to Maud, but had a slightly stronger sense of injustice from when she was younger, whereas Maud, I think, finds it later. She kind of always felt like something wasn't quite right. But she sort of similarly lost her husband, lost her family, was cast out, had a nervous breakdown. But she overheard, before she kind of became a suffragette, she overheard this woman speaking, this suffragette, and she was saying all the things about what her life could be like if she had the vote. And she said in that moment, just everything changed. And she wrote, "She it was who lit the flame which consumed the past." And she suddenly just moved on to this completely different life. And I think it just happened to so many women like that.
Yeah.
But it was really cool.
How real were the stories of losing, having your son taken away? That absolutely broke me watching the film.
Yeah, that happened to lots of women. At that time, women had no parental rights over their children. So I think you had certain rights over your children until they were the age of 7, and then from then on, all the rights passed over to the husband. So in that scene, she essentially knows there's nothing she can do legally to stop it. But that happened a lot. A lot of women lost their families, and a lot of women were put in mental institutions. They were committed by their husbands for becoming suffragettes.
Sure.
Yeah.
You hysteria,
Yeah,
obviously.
Exactly. Hysterical women trying to get any kind of power.
Why would you ever stand up for yourself?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
obviously nuts.
Yeah, and that was the thing. That was the propaganda they released around women's suffrage. It was that women were hysterical and that they couldn't control their emotions, and their hormones meant that they couldn't.
I mean, we're still suffering from that.
Oh yeah.
Aren't we? It's like a marketing campaign, basically, against us.
Yeah.
That men decided who had the bigger voice.
Yeah.
How do you feel the movie is being do you feel like the conversations you're having, I assume, feel very modern? Like the movie has a lot of resonance today to people?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the nicest thing has been like girls in London or girls in England have been twittering, have been tweeting, "I'll never not use my vote again," which is so cool. And that's kind of, that's the coolest thing about it. That's been one of the nicest things. But yeah, it does. It feels, really relevant. I mean, at the end of the film, there's a list of, dates of when women got the vote. And the last one says Saudi Arabia 2015, and women have been promised a vote. And then Abby Morgan and Sarah Gavron were speaking to a woman in Saudi Arabia the other day, a filmmaker, and she said, well, yeah, it's true, but women will have to be driven to the polling stations by their husbands. And she has, the only man in her house is her 11-year-old son. So, it's an odd reality that, we have the vote in so many countries, but there are so many other rights, and the marriage age for girls in the Sudan is 10, I've been talking about female directors so much in the last couple of weeks because of our film, but you directed.
Yes.
Was it your first feature?
It was my first feature film.
I'm so in awe of directors because I think it's just such a gargantuan task. How was it?
It is. It's a big job. I really enjoyed it. It's really interesting to work on sort of macro and micro all the same. You have to always be thinking about the big picture. Yeah. Even when you're just, making the coffee cup the right way. And I think I sort of loved the ordering every day and the collaboration with everyone. It's funny, everyone on the crew and in the cast, they're all there concerned about their one job. The actor cares about their role, and the set designer cares about, this, and the DB cares about the light, and, the only person who has to constantly be thinking about what the larger picture is, what's the whole movie, is the director. And So, you know, but you need everyone to care
Yeah.
about their individual jobs.
Yeah.
And so it's a fine balance constantly of, it will be okay if the light is not perfect in this moment.
Do you delegate a lot then? I mean, does it feel like you're delegating, or does it feel like it's not so much delegating because everyone has their role and you're just...
everyone has their role. So I think it's about appreciating what everyone's role is and really inviting everyone into the process of making the movie. And battling a little bit, holding the line when you feel like someone's a little off course, you know, and just trying to stay steady and let everyone feel like they got their say, but at the same time knowing that they're you know, we only have so many hours in a day, and I got to get what I need for the big picture.
And that must be so interesting, because I always think when you're working with directors, when you look at them at the end of the day and you say, like, did we get it? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to do that, and you were lying probably sometimes.
And so what's something new that you discovered while working on this project?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I learned anything. Oh, I did learn things.
You learned so much.
I did learn. I learned a lot of history. Something new I discovered. I don't know, I think probably most uniquely was the experience of working with so many women. I hadn't been in a room with that many women.
You don't make movies with a lot of women.
You walk
No one
in
does.
and there's one
No
other
women do.
actress maybe, and you might not be in the same scene as her ever. So I think that was probably the most, it was like a, you know, sounds very pretentious, but it was a kind of sisterhood, you know, in the way that I've never experienced. So that was new.
That's great.
Yeah. What did you experience new? I wanted to ask you if you improvised on Love and Mercy.
I did, a little bit.
I thought you did. It felt like, not about the script or something. No, it felt really kind of organic, everything that you guys were saying, and it felt like very,
you know,
in the moment.
it was, I mean, we had an amazing script, and so, you know, we were there, but it was a great lesson in being present all the time, you know. Brian Wilson is one of those people in life who enters a room and makes everybody want to take care of him a little bit, and he draws people in because he's kind of quiet and he's got his own rhythm, you know, he's kind of working on his own wavelength, and I really felt John Cusack brought that to set every day, and so it was really just, I'm gonna take this in and try and react to this. And you know, we had the words, but sometimes, you know, the wavelength changed. It was fun and fascinating, and so nice that we were able to play a little bit, that we had a director and a writer who wanted that organic nature to come out.
Do you know who this man is? Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys.
You didn't mention that.
Well, because that stuff doesn't matter. That's ego stuff, you know?
Are you kidding me? I love your music. I grew up on it. So, thank you.
That makes me feel really good, Melinda Ledbetter.
Okay.
Melinda
Good enough.
Ledbetter.
Right? It's a nice name. Why don't you get started on the paperwork, okay?
If there was anything new that you discovered when you were working on that.
So much, you know, also the film is historical as well, in that, you know, it presents someone's life and someone famous, that everyone knows that music, and, you know, a big part of it was just me reappreciating the music and what the Beach Boys gave to the world, and also the empathy necessary for people with mental illness. I think we've all sort of taken something away. I think the movie is as much about people who just need a hand, just who are in circumstances, whatever those are. And I think we've all met those people who you just think, if I just put my hand out and, like, you know, take my hand and it will change. And we think we all know people like that, and it's about that kind of kindness and generosity that's necessary to, like, get those people through life that just need a little extra help and understanding.
Thanks for watching Actors on Actors. Click to the left to watch our conversation with Paul Dano and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Click to the right to watch our full conversation with Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. And don't forget to subscribe to Variety's channel.